Hey gang, I'm going to talk about silent films today because I think they're an interesting little slice of film history, and that's what I feel like talking about this week. And we're going to start with A Trip to the Moon is this movie from the very early 20th century. It was created more as kind of a showcase of visual tricks and little effects and things like that. And honestly, the effects are, as one might expect, a little bit dated, but granted, this movie came out at a time when pulling a rabbit out of a hat was seen as like the pinnacle of groundbreaking magic entertainment. A Trip to the Moon was definitely more impressive for its time, but there are still certainly elements of it that hold up. It is still a pretty clever commentary on British imperialism because the entire plot is that there are these scientists that fly to the moon and kill the moon people that live up there, and then they come back home and they're given a lot of praise for what they did. It's interesting, it's kind of fun, but I honestly can't really recommend it a whole lot if you're not really interested in film history. Next, we're going to talk about The Vampires is this French crime serial. It's not really a movie. It was really like this 10-part thing that was shown in French cinemas. It totals over 7 hours long. And I'm not going to lie, this movie, as with many of the other entries on this list, I had to watch at a faster speed because this is where they get really boring. Watching this movie, I kind of realized that I am much less of a visual person than I thought I was, because silent films tell their stories almost exclusively through visuals, and this, along with some of the other movies on this list, just really did not do it for me. They did not hold my attention very well. I do think there was an interesting story that was developing here, but did not need to be 7.5 hours, and personally not my cup of tea. Now, you can't talk about bad early 20th century films without talking about D.W. Griffith was this director that made several silent films throughout the early 20th century. And I've seen 3 of them. I've seen Birth of a Nation, I've seen Intolerance, and I've seen Broken Blossoms. And I don't like any of them. For one, a lot of these movies are very racist, especially Birth of a Nation. So that was not the best watch experience that I've ever had. I wouldn't call it an enjoyable thing to sit through. His movies are all just really long. They're all way too long. They're all every one of them is 3 hours long. And they're all just so boring and so uninteresting. And, maybe I should be speaking a little more highly of silent films as a film student. But personally, I don't know. I'm kind of glad that we moved away from this whole thing. A lot of these movies, a common theme with them that you'll notice if you watch a lot of them, is that they feel like they're being held back by the medium. They feel like, well, yeah, it's impressive to look at, but it would be so much better with sound. So yeah, D.W. Griffith made a lot of bad movies. I don't know. Good for the time, respected for the time, but movies that do not hold up either in a film sense or just sort of with the way that we have culturally progressed past making movies like this. Next is The Cat. If those previous movies didn't do a good job of holding my attention, this was definitely the movie that I think did the best job of it. It has some really creative, some really interesting set pieces and set design. This is widely regarded as one of, if not the first horror movie ever, which is kind of cool. I think it's worth checking out for that reason. But again, it's very long, and it's very slow, and it's very boring, because it really feels like it is being held back by the fact that it does not have any sound. I really wanted to like this movie because I love horror, but I really didn't. And it kind of sucks. I was disappointed. And I wish I didn't have to be. Next up is Strike is a film from 1925 about the workers' strike in Russia. And again, it's starting to sound like a broken record a little bit, but it is plagued by a lot of the same issues that the rest of these movies are plagued with. It does have some fun characters, and they do get a little bit creative in this one. They show some footage of animals being slaughtered, which isn't really my bag, not something that I enjoy, sitting down to watch around the TV, with the family, rounding up the gang. Hey, let's watch some pigs and cows get stabbed and stuff. But it's an artistic decision. It's an artistic decision that I can respect. And honestly, it does more than the rest of these movies do. Still, didn't leave much of a lasting impact on me. Maybe I'm not cut out for film. Next is I had low expectations for The General as soon as I started it. I heard that it was one of the greatest silent films ever made, but then I started it, and it seemed to be plagued by a lot of the same issues that the rest of these movies are plagued with. It looked like it was going to be slow and boring and sepia. Watching a lot of silent films has made me so sick of sepia. I hate sepia now. Can't even go back and watch The Wizard of Oz. Couldn't do it if I tried. But The General actually kind of turned around for me towards the end. It felt like it kind of started to embrace the idea that it doesn't have sound and that it has to find a more visually captivating way of grabbing its audience's attention. So it has a lot of really cool set pieces like these trains and some fun camera angles. This was genuinely maybe the best of these movies that I had watched so far. But this movie ain't got shit on Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin is easily responsible for the best silent films that I've ever seen. I've only seen The Gold Rush and City Lights, but those movies put the rest of the movies on this list to shame. Well, the rest of the movies that I talked about all feel like they're being held back by the absence of sound. Charlie Chaplin's films feel like they fully embrace it. His movies are entirely visual, and they're incredibly captivating and interesting because there's always something going on. There's always something to look at. I seriously respect Charlie Chaplin as a filmmaker because he seemed, very willing to make films within the limitations that were given to him. And he made some really incredible films and tells some really fun stories with them. They're a delight to watch. They have so much heart and soul in them. And they are, without a doubt, the films on this list that I would recommend the most. They're truly a joy and a delight to watch. Do yourself a favor and check some of these out.